Oh, tell me if you can't hear me. I'm a bit closer now. Hello, everybody. My name is Lynch. I've met some of you, but not many. Before I moved to Melbourne at the end of 2018, Liz and I were digital life writing friends, and when I arrived here, she kindly met and welcomed me at a book launch, naturally, at Lee Kaufman's. Since then, I've been privileged to collaborate with her on all sorts of writing projects, papers, reviews, secret Flinders University business, and in several writing groups. And I was going to say, including the rowdy one over there, but I think they're undercover today, are they? There's a couple of people I've seen lurking. We're presenting today on unceded land, warmed by Wurundjeri Woiwurrung women of the Kulin Nation, who surely stood together to tell difficult stories. Family stories, repressed stories, redacted stories, with the same determination, dignity and strength, with the same care, knowledge and wit as my friend Elisabeth Hanscombe, and I pay my respects to those aunties and elders then and now. Liz is a fine writer who writes clear, engaging and often lyrical prose. Her book is written in fierce but humble spirit. She is a resilient truth teller and often blackly funny. On behalf of Liz and perhaps her very dynamic Jessica Mudd, publisher and owner of Hembury Books, who wanted to be here but could not and would like me to take lots of photographs, sorry about that, I'd like to welcome you all. Looking around, I see a few beloved family, friends, writing group members, distinguished writers and editors, many of whom an Adelaide writer might not have met yet. I very much hope to spot Mrs. Millanova in the crowd, whom I met inside the book. I thought you had a promise. So the outline for this afternoon, it's a fairly quick session because there's a lot of tab on the bar, I believe. But Carrie, Tiffany, on my right, will launch, and she and Liz will read a little from the book. Then we'll have 15 minutes for questions. After that, you might like to buy a copy of the book and chat to Liz up close and personal. Carrie, while New Zealand and Yorkshire might make a claim, I consider you Australia's national treasure. In fact, if you people read her essay, it's Seven Snakes, is that the title? I got that wrong. The Seven Snakes, which won the first prize for the 2024 Melbourne Literary Prize, you'll realise she's more Australian than most of us. For instance, she knows how to sneak a snake on an aeroplane. You've probably read her novels, Every Man's Guide to Scientific Living, The Exploded View and Mateship with Birds, which earned gong after well-deserved gong. Carrie has found clever and safe ways to represent traumatised survivor women and girls in fiction. As Liz's longtime advocate and friend, I can't think of a better person to launch this book.
Thank you. That was lovely, Gabe. Thank you. I'll start with an anecdote. When I was 11, I think around the same age as Liz, in the chilling Sewing by Moonlight scene from the prologue of her book, my family moved home. I was due to go to the local state high school, but I still had 1 year of primary left. We weren't on the bus route for the state primary, but there was a small Catholic school nearby. I had never been inside a church, nor even touched a Bible. Jesus was only invoked in my family when my father was angry, as in, Jesus Christ, you imbecile girl. On my first day at the new school, we went across to the church for Mass. And I followed the line of boys and girls who knelt before the priest to swallow the papery wafer, to sip the purple grape juice. Back in class, the nun hissed at me for my sin and sent me to the presbytery to be dealt with by the priest. I guess I can see this is causing Liz some grief just even thinking about it. It's okay. It was a hot day, a hot Perth day. The pink-faced priest had taken off his dress and was sitting on his porch in his stubbies, drinking a beer, eating a ham sandwich, and listening to the races on a transistor radio. He wafted his hand about in front of him. Was there a fly? No. Something about a father, a son, a holy goat. The Trinity of the Catholic doctrine, the Father who begets, the Son who is begotten, and the Holy Ghost who proceeds. Liz's beautiful new memoir, The Museum of Failure, is concerned with the Trinity. Her dysfunctional family of origin, traumatised by war and poverty, the Catholic Church that failed to provide her with the physical and spiritual protection it promised, and the secretive institution of Melbourne's psychoanalytic training that rejected her without explanation. This book has been a long time in the writing and making, and I know that Liz has experienced periods of frustration with it, intense frustration with it, and I want to thank her for not giving up. The Museum of Failure is an act of tenderness and empathy, an attempt to make sense of experiences that are confronting and often at terrible cost kept secret. There is a heart beating at the centre of this book. It is a heart as much as a mind that brings Liz's experiences into language. In his book of hours, Rilke wrote, "Nothing has been real without my seeing it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come towards me to meet and be met." Liz's intelligent thinking and writing ripens things. They glow, they soften, they open, they expand. Her sentences, so finely balanced, with a plain-speaking grace, move backwards and forwards through time. There are cuts in this story, there are tears, there is despair, but there is also enlargement and understanding. Her writing is learned and discursive. It contains years of personal and professional inquiry, but it wears this knowledge lightly. What is a Trinity but a gestalt, a pattern? The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. I'd like to suggest a new Trinity. How about the Mother who begets? The daughters, there are 4 of them. They are marvellous. A number of them are here together. The daughters who are begotten, and the riches and the wonder of the book that precedes.
You're going to read, aren't you?
This is going to read.
I just equivocated about what to share with you because I didn't want to sort of make it too whatever. So I've picked a tame piece that hopefully won't go on for too long. The light is appalling here. That's okay. Okay, here we go. It's a feat of invisible mending in my mind to write a book that seeks to address a lifetime of mishaps. An old-fashioned word, mishap, lighter than the notion of trauma, suggestive of chance failures, misadventures, unfortunate occurrences, but nothing so extreme that we can't get beyond them. After the analyst dismissed me, I could not bear to read psychoanalytic text anymore. The words in these books felt foreign, out of bounds for me. They held a loftiness and stature that left me with a sense I was no longer welcome. Instead, I turned back to the books I read in my 20s, once I finished at the university and had time to read again for pleasure. Not the clever wordiness of Charles Dickens and his Wondrous Bleak House, which I read for my first English literature unit as an 18-year-old, but the second-wave feminist writing of women like Doris Lessing, all the petty personal problems she explores in her golden notebooks. I was Martha Quest, in search of freedom, however far I lived from South Africa. And Margaret Drabble offered my first encounters with consciousness-raising groups. One writer led me on to another. You can only approach the past from a distance. Reading books helps create that distance. Only then can you get a broad enough perspective to capture the essence of your experience. I look back on my own childhood and my memory looks different from what I see today when I drive along Canterbury Road and up Wentworth Avenue. I was 5 when we first lived in the house at 2 Wentworth Avenue in Canterbury. The house still stands, though it's renovated, the back gutted, to make way for a clean, open living area and an elevated study that looks out onto a tiny, neat garden. They sacrificed some of the old backyard for interior space. Years ago, the house came up for sale and I went to the open for inspection. As I entered, the house looked different. The worn carpet and dark stained wood panelled doors gone. The distance between the front door and the hallway and the first line of bedrooms had shrunk so much I needed only a few steps to cross it. My brothers and I played marbles on that stretch of carpet, and the piano stood in the corner pressed against the wall with plenty of room for the stool and the person playing, and for people to walk up and down behind. The hallway has also shrunk from my memory into a narrow corridor that is no longer dark. A skylight in the ceiling sends a shaft of light that illuminates the corridor from a long and tedious stretch of land I once crossed daily, keen to escape the backyard and avoid my father. I know this is the price we pay for growing up, that the vast spaces of our childhood shrink to a fraction of their original size. I wish it were not so, and that my memories, at least the ones that relate to space and distance, could be met today as they were then. My father has shrunk in size as characters change their shape and impact in the books we read. But still, I revel in the surprise and, I can hardly hold my page, and sense of discovery when I revisit a landscape that from my childhood, or imagine a landscape from the books I read. My world expands. Reading books, revisiting the past, encountering new worlds can take us back into that curious realm where the best and worst of our childhoods come alive again. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. That was lovely. It's beautiful. I want to return firstly to this notion of the Trinity that you and I have spoken about, but you know, there are these sort of 3 silences in the book around each of them, the sort of silences and secrets of the family, of the church, and then the psychoanalytic training. And you do a very masterful job, I think, of threading those together. And I know you've written about them separately, but at what point did you sort of know there were associations? And is that the point where you sort of realised that you had a book, when you could sort of see how they were coming together?
Yeah, I'm not sure at what point it was, but I know somewhere, because this book was sort of evolved in part out of my PhD as well, so it's a long gestation. And I know that when I started thinking about my PhD and my topic, I remember being so angry with the analysts. I couldn't bear it because I was so hurt. I went into the PhD shortly after the analysts dismissed me. And so writing was my way of dealing with it. I was angry with them in part because of the secrecy. And I think it was the secrecy and the feeling that I wasn't allowed to talk about things that then married my experience in my childhood with my family, because if you live in an incestuous family, you're not allowed to talk about things. You get the message very early in the piece that you have to keep things secret. And it's sort of like in your bones. And then I suppose with the psychoanalyst, and then with the Catholic Church too, because it reminded me of things, you see something, you notice something, but you're not allowed to talk about it. And that's where I think the three things came together.
Thank you. The title of Liz's PhD is Life Writing as an Act of Revenge. It's a fantastic title, and I commend it to you. Revenge, great motivator for writing, I think. You're interested as a writer and as a psychotherapist in subjectivity. One of the beautiful things about the book is that all of you is there, or we have a sense that all of you is there. I know you've created a narrator for the book, but for me, your narrator feels very authentic, and probably because I know you, I have a sense that you're kind of really on the page. But I wonder if do you think there are ever appropriate silences? Are there things that you wouldn't write about?
Yes, I think things that I probably haven't processed, I haven't written about. Things that I'm aware of and things that I'm not aware of. I had a long analysis for several years, 5 times a week, and so I processed a lot of my experience, and all those things I think I can write about. But I don't know, there's the issue of not wanting to hurt people, which is always something you've got to be very careful about. But also, I think it's when you haven't worked it out yourself. It's like, I find writing is a way of working things out, but I think there are things that I haven't yet worked out that I can't even go into because maybe I don't even know about them. There's a lot you don't know. So that's sort of my take. Of course there are things you wouldn't write about. I know there are things I wouldn't write about. But I don't think of them as secret. Not so much secret as just not understood or known about.
And that's kind of part of getting through the muck, isn't it? Finding the language and bringing things into language that happens both, I think, in analysis and in writing as well. So when I was reading Liz writing about analysis, and there's not a lot of really sincere writing about analysis. I think we're often kind of appalled at trying to put the kind of whininess of our analysis, the endlessness, the repetition, some of the kind of feelings of embarrassment we might have around transference, all of those sorts of things on the page. So I think this is a very important book because it does document an analysis. I was very moved, Liz, when you said you loved your analyst. I thought that was really really moving and really kind of important piece of writing. You begin by saying when you're writing about your analysis, it's hard to talk about it. And then you sort of reveal some of the minutiae of it in its obsessions. I'm wondering if you think the analysis has impacted how you write. I think you've just said it's impacted what you might write, but what about the how you actually write?
Such a good question. I think so. I feel like Mrs. Milanova, love her name. Sally Morrison gave me that name. I might give about Sally Morrison did. You told me. I was looking for a name and you said, what about an Eastern European sort of sounding name? Something like Mrs. Milanova. And I loved it and I stole it. I borrowed it. I took it. Anyhow. Thank you, Sally. Anyhow, Mrs. Milanova, she's Mrs. Milanova more in my mind than her actual real name, which is, I think, what can happen over time. She was in my bones, and I've forgotten what the question was.
About your analysis.
Yeah, I think it has. I know towards the end of my analysis, when I was really getting quite keen to finish, and part of my motivation to finish was there were these lots of writing courses that I heard about that I wanted to do that I couldn't do because they always coincided with when my analytic session was on. And I remember sort of saying, I'll be able to go and do the professional writing and editing course at the CAE once I get out of this analysis. So that was very influential, but I also remember thinking, I wish I could go on with her and work on my writing with her. because I was doing some short courses with people like the lovely Janie Runcie over there, my beloved Janie, and I remember I was still in analysis at the time, and I would come in after a session, and my session was so much in my mind, and Janie was trying to help us write. So I had my analytic session in my mind, and as well as whatever the prompts were, trying to sort of find ways. And it was really helpful. And I used to think, oh my God, if I could put these two things together, it would be really helpful. But it was just not literally possible, time-wise, expense-wise, and everything else. And I had to finish one day. So the analysis went. Did it influence the way I write? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Can't say. I struggle with that one. It's an interesting thing. She's very different from me, Mrs. Milanova. Much more private. She'd have her. That's why I said there's no way she'd be here, because she'd have her reservations about. I should probably be okay. I shouldn't speak for her.
I think in Liz's writing about her analysis, and she does. To me, it's a very literary analysis, because you actually bring bits of books that you love and passages, and you read them to your analyst. So she's kind of using the analytic session in some ways as a kind of writers group, in the same way that I think she's probably using the writers group as a kind of analytic session too. So there's this lovely kind of movement between the two that I really noticed. I want to continue to talk about Liz as a writer, because she's a very energetic and enthusiastic writer. This is her second memoir, and I commend to you her first, The Art of Disappearance, to readers. Liz is very widely published in journals, and she has a popular blog. She has a lot of fans. And she's someone who creates kind of communities of practice around writing. And I know there's a number of people here today that are in writers' groups or in these kind of communities of practice with Liz, and she's a very kind of active and generous member of them. So in one of the later chapters, Liz describes her 15-year-old self, and she's scribbling in a green notebook in chapel. And she says she wants to tell her what she knows about writing now, which is that instinct and practice are the two great pillars of the writer's life, while of course learning from reading. And I want to know, Liz seems to intrinsically know in her writing, in all of her writing, particularly when she's writing about, she mentioned incest, very difficult, confronting material. She seems to know how much the narrative can bear, and she needs to know, she seems to know very important things about kind of pace and imagery, where to break off from metaphor. So the reader has this experience and experiences the horror of what it was to be Liz in that family and her siblings, but somehow we're able to bear it. And I think that's a remarkable ability to do in memoir. And I wanted to ask about that. Like, is it, do you draft and then do you go back? Do you take away? Do you put in? Do you read it yourself aloud? Are you testing it on these sort of communities of practice, on other writers, to kind of see how the reader is experiencing it?
Probably all those things. I'm a bit of an instinctive gut level writer. I mean, the thing that has helped me most, and I think I've said it elsewhere, I did a course, Free-Fall Writing, which is where you write whatever is in your mind and you don't censor yourself and you don't look at what you've written, you just let it go, and you don't know where you're going, and you start with a blank page and you don't rehearse, you just see what comes up. And I do that all the time, so I'm always writing, but I don't know that it's never ever going to go anywhere. It's just what I call practice, like doing scales or something. And it gives me such immense satisfaction. I do it every Saturday and Sunday morning if I can, and I just write whatever comes into my head. And then, later I will go back to it maybe a lot later, and I look for bits and pieces that have some resonance or feel okay. And I prune and I reshape and I talk to other people and I go to workshops and I've shared it with lots of other writers. And yeah, I don't have a huge amount of confidence in what I do, but somehow it seems to work. It's that whole fraudulent feeling that I think a lot of people have. But I do read it out loud. I also got that thing that Will help me with, where you can press F8 and you can get a voice come back at you with reading it, Do you know that? Oh, it's the best thing in the world. What's the formal word? What's the word, Will?
Narration. Read aloud.
Read aloud, yeah. So you've got your text and your computer will read it out loud back to you so you can correct it as you go. The voices are pretty horrible. Some of them are horrible, but I find it helpful. And I mean, David, you do something super. Where's David?
I'm here.
Yeah, what do you do?
Tell us what you do.
I have an Irish voice, or a British voice. I've got cultural credence around the Australian accent, so I listen back to him like, it's the motherland. No, it's not my motherland. For me. Maybe. Sorry.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's really helpful. I think hearing the words back at you, even if it's coming in a clunky accent, helps. It's probably better if I read it myself, which I also do. Yes, it takes a long time. I usually close the door and sometimes say to Bill, I'm reading out loud, so, leave me alone sort of thing. So yes, it's practice. And I did it once at Varuna, and it was a problem because Varuna is that writing retreat in the Blue Mountains, and you've got to be quiet. You're supposed to be quiet, and I was terribly worried that I'd be making too much noise, because I've got a loud voice. It travels. So yes, that's it.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks. Well, I think at that point we should open it up. Should we go just briefly? If people have got questions.
You didn't want to read any part of it? No. You happy? Sure. Has anyone else got a question that sprang out of that excellent discussion? Or
I have a question.
Right.
Often on the stool would be hard.
So I have been friends with Liz. We've been in multiple writing groups, and so I have seen this work in various forms, like writing group friends here, new writing group friends over here, and I know that you did so many freaking drafts on this thing, right? Like so many. You had advice from, I think one of the frustrations was you going, just make it the thing, and then we can just. You're a person who likes to get things finished, as mine. I like it to be done, and let's move on. How did you finally kind of settle on the approach? And how, for me, it often becomes a click feeling. It's of like, yes, there's like a feeling of something that happens inside of me that's like, and also like, I will burn it if I look at it again, so I'm getting rid of it now. What is it for you? How did it happen?
Yeah, I probably need it. I'll throw my voice. No, I don't think it happened in one iteration. Chris Olsen helped me. Carrie put me onto the wonderful Chris Olsen. She did a version. I put it in my acknowledgements. There's multiple people who have edited it and looked at it and thought about it and helped me think about it. But I think Chris's was really important, and then Jessica Friedman, who did the final sort of edit, she really helped me too. So, there's a sort of just a process of listening to other people and, I don't know, finally thinking it's finished, but, it's not really.
It's always abandoned.
No,
Just
yeah.
abandon it where it is.
You have to abandon it, yeah, exactly.
Didn't Mrs. Millanova said what a difficult task it was to hold the paradox? Is that part of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else got a question?
Yes.
Sorry? I can't see any hands. Yeah, I think we've probably spoken enough. I had a couple that Carrie's crossed over with me, which will be good to talk about later.
Let me put my specs back on and just see.
a couple of thank yous on Liz's behalf. Thank you, Carrie, and for all of you for coming along to help Liz celebrate her important and long incubated book. Please buy a copy if you haven't already. Chat with Liz while she signs it, and stick around to make sure all the tab is gone before you go home.
It's a big tab.
Yeah. My husband has absconded with my copy of the book, and I have to get it back. He says she's a very good writer. Well, we all knew that. Do we wish to thank the Moat for hosting this excellent event?
Thank you, Moat.
Thank you, Moat.
I'd like to thank Tessa and Tim, who helped me with the cover. They did all of that work. I'd like to thank Jessica Muddett, the publisher, because she's a lovely, dynamic woman. She's amazing. She's so fast. I quite like fast. I'm a bit of a fast person myself. Bill will tell you, if I get an email, I'm inclined to answer pretty well straight away, and he's forever saying to me, you don't need to answer yet. You can take your time, and that frustrates me. So yes, I like fast. And I just want to thank everybody else who's here and everybody who's helped me along the way. And it's a sort of mixture of the writerly world and the psychoanalytic, psychotherapeutic world, and my family, my very important, beloved family. That's about it, isn't it?
Your husband who can cook?
Bill who can cook, and Bill who puts up with all of the whatever is required. Bill who also can write, and I'm urging him to write because he really should write, but it does take a bit of persistence and discipline. So, there you go.
So, Fly, beautiful, literary, wonderful book. Let's let this little book fly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Good luck with it. It's a beautiful book. Well done.